so far. I think we'll give it maybe one or two more minutes just to get some stragglers, and then we'll get started. All right. Well, it's just about 5 after, so I'm sure we'll get some more stragglers. But let's go ahead and get started. A warm welcome to all of you to the AIC's International Women's Day panel discussion. Happy International Women's Day to everyone as well. My name is Paige Holt. I am the president of the AIC. And today we're going to talk about leadership in the times of crisis. I think I don't speak only for myself when I say that whether we're leading a company or teams or our families or quite frankly ourselves, I think we could all use a bit of advice on how to be leaders in this marathon of pandemic that we're going through. So I'm very excited to have this panel. We have three amazing young leaders, Swiss leaders, to speak to us today. Before we get started, just a couple of things I want to mention that are going on around the club. One is the AIC has launched a mentoring program. This program is designed for young professionals who could use some coaching or advice on their career path or things going on in their current positions. And we're pairing them up with older professionals in the club that have been around the block a few times and would like to share their knowledge. What's great about the AIC is, as I'm sure many of you can attest to, is that we have such a diversity in our membership in terms of nationalities, backgrounds, industries, professions, international experience. And so younger professionals, I think, could really benefit from that. So if you're interested in that, to become a mentee or a mentor, please check out amclub.ch, or you can send us an email, admin@amclub.ch. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that every day this year we are celebrating because we turned 70 this year. 70 years that the American International Club has been in Geneva, that was founded, this club was founded in Geneva. So it's a big year for us, and to mark that milestone, hopefully in the next few months, we will have a chance to gather you all together and have a drink and celebrate this amazing event. But in the meantime, we have a history quiz, a club history quiz that we're doing throughout the year. You can find it on our social media. We have accounts on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. You can also find it on our website, amclub.ch. And if you are a member and you participate in the quiz, you have the chance to win 2 round-trip tickets to the United States, thanks to Swiss International Airlines. So have a look out for that. Go on our social media platforms, Please share, like, comment, and participate. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to start the discussion and introduce obviously our panelists. I'm thinking we'll go for 45 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. And the way we're doing questions is you have two options. You can either raise your emoji hand, and by that you go to the bottom of your screen and you can see reactions. If you click on that, you'll see raise hand, and we will see that you would like to ask your question personally. Otherwise, if you prefer, you can send it to the chat and we can read the question out in the chat section of the screen. My colleague Luka Dacic is with me and will help me manage the question and answer section a little later. So again, we're talking about leadership in the time of crisis, and we've invited, it is International Women's Day, we've invited 3 female CEOs to talk about this because they're living and breathing it every day. And interestingly, when I talked to the 3 of them last week in preparation for this event, they said, well, we're happy to talk about leadership. We're happy to talk about what's going on in our industries, how we're coping with these events, but we don't really need to put the emphasis on female. And it's a fair point. I think what I would like for all of us to get out of the discussion today is, what are the characteristics that make for a good leader? How are they being used in situ? We have seen in the past several months, I'm sure many of you have come across this research that says that female leaders have come out ahead in the middle of this COVID environment. Many have been quite successful in managing this, not only in countries, but in businesses. I'm thinking of Angela Merkel or Jacinda Ardern, who have been commended for their leadership style. And so the idea is, what is it with these female leaders? What is the style that is working for them during this COVID pandemic, during this time of crisis? And what can we learn from that? What style, what characteristics of that can we apply to our own leadership, regardless of our gender? I'm not sure we'll answer all those questions today, but I think that we're on a good path with the 3 experts that we have with us today. So I'm going to read their official bios, but then I'm going to ask each of them to give me a personal spin on it. So I'll start with Alisée de Tonnac. Alisée, welcome, is the co-founder and co-CEO of Seedstars, a Swiss-based group with the mission to impact people's lives in emerging markets through technology and entrepreneurship. Seedstars connects stakeholders, builds companies from scratch with public and private partners, and invests in high growth ventures within these ecosystems. Seedstars Group is present in over 90 countries with activities that include the largest entrepreneurship competition in emerging markets, which is Seedstars World Competition, the Entrepreneurship Forum for Emerging Markets, which is Seedstars Summit, physical entrepreneurship hubs, which are the seed spaces, acceleration and growth programs called Seedstars Programs, and a venture capital fund called Seedstars Investments. Alisée sits on several boards of companies and foundations in Switzerland and abroad, and is also a member of the Swiss Innovation Council. She was nominated Social Entrepreneur Forbes 30 Under 30, Innovative Fellow of Wired UK, Europe's most influential women in the startup and venture capital space, and one of the 29 powerful women by Refinery 29. Isabelle Harsch. Isabelle is CEO of Harsch, The Art of Moving Forward, a moving and transit company. Isabelle was born in Geneva, and she holds Swiss-Italian dual nationality. After obtaining a bachelor in law in 2009, she continued her education in Berlin for a year, earning her master in general law in 2011. After completing her studies, she joined the family business and worked in all the departments, for 5 years to learn the business. She took over as head of the company when she was only 28 years old. In addition to her role as CEO, Isabelle continues her education in fields such as self-leadership, labor law, and Swiss company administration. She plays an active role with various professional associations and committees such as AGED, which is l'Association Genevoise des Entreprises de Déménagement, SAHA, which is Swiss Association of Relocation Agents, and SMA, Swiss Movers Association. Ladina Heimgartner is head of global media and the CEO of Blick Group. She's also a sitting member of the executive board of Ringier. Ladina has been a member of the executive board since February 2020 and head of global media at Ringier and CEO of the Blick Group since October of 2020. From February to September of that year, she was head of corporate center at Ringier, at Ringier headquarters. Before joining the company, she held various positions at the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation, the SRG SSR, from 2007. Having started as a radio editor, she later became a head of department and deputy editor-in-chief. In 2011, as part of the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation's general management, she established the Markets and Quality Department and was subsequently responsible for managing it. After being appointed director of the Rheto-Romanic Business Unit, RTR, that's the Romansh-speaking branch of the SBC, in August 2014, she also became the Deputy Director General of the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation in October 2017. She studied German linguistics and Romansh language in Fribourg. She also holds an EMBA in leadership and management. Ladina is a member of the Swiss Federal Media Commission and a member of the board of the Initiative for Media Innovation. So welcome to all three of you. I want to start perhaps with Alisée. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about your background. I remember when we spoke in the past, you said initially you got out of school and you had this career track. You wanted the perfect CV and you joined L'Oreal. And here you are now, you founded a company, you're in venture capital, you're leading teams in 90 countries. Tell me where was the switch and what made you want to become a leader and a company founder?
Yes, I don't think I knew I wanted to be a leader or a company founder, but it was very clear. And I think there are many moments and not just one, but it was a while where I was feeling very complacent and very uncomfortable with the fact that my value added was selling lipstick, and I was with great teams and I was learning a lot, but I was really reflecting on how I would bring more sense to my day-to-day. And so I was very, very lucky to meet my co-founders, because now with the experience, I see how hard it is first time to find the right founding team. And so I was very lucky to have them that had already quite an experience in their entrepreneurial journey. And we launched Seedstars, which is still my story 8 years later. So I think it was, that sentiment of complacence. And then I was unbelievably in admiration to my co-founders, who were so confident in how they were proactively designing and defining their day-to-day. Like for me, that was the myth. That was what you would say with your colleagues at work. Yeah, of course you want to do a world tour. Yeah, of course you'd like to do this, but then get back to reality. And they were just consistent in building their day-to-day, building their values and the vision of the company. And so, and since we're with Seedstars.
It sounds like a very inspiring environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what keeps you so motivated, because there's so many downsides to building and leading your own company. It's really a tough journey. And I think not just building, but just trying to lead a bigger project that you want it to be bigger than yourself. That level of inspiration and teams that you've connected with on values makes it super powerful. And I remember very clearly when we were building the kind of core team, I was telling my co-founders, like, why aren't we getting the best, like just the best in finance, the best in M&A, etc. And they're like, you're missing the point. It's a long-term game. So either we identify talents that are aligned with our values, so that when the highs come, which are as absurd as the lows, we'll stick together. If you focus on competencies, we're probably going to find a breaking point much sooner than you think. And I thought that was really, it was really interesting learning early on, which completely became true over the years as we were building Seedstars. And that's why we're still the same founding team.
So already a good piece of advice on leadership, right? Okay, thank you. I want to go over to perhaps Isabelle. Isabelle, I mean, you've been the leader of a company since 28. I know that this is a multi-generational family business. You inherited it from your father, who I believe inherited it from his grandfather. I mean, inheriting a company like that is both a blessing and a curse, I can imagine. And particularly as a young woman in a field, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that most of your employees are male. How did you, in such an early age, how did you get the buy-in? How did you earn respect from your team? And another question is, did you always want to be the leader of this company? Or did you have a choice?
Yes, thank you for the question. It was definitely my choice to join the company and to take over the management. My father, of course, also wanted this to happen. I'm in the family, we are 4 kids, so I have older brother and sisters, but none of them were interested on taking over the company. So he looked at me when I was 10 already, because they're older, and when they were 20, they already declared they didn't want to take over. So, but so I had this confidence of my father, which built the confidence, my own confidence, and it's very important. But I was always free to choose my path, and thanks to my father, because he was very open-minded, and also thanks to my mother. So I felt totally free. And I always say to my father, no, I don't want, I want to do something else. But I think in the bottom of my soul, of my heart, I wanted it, because I was always very proud of the company, and I felt pretty independent. So for me, it looks like the dream job. Obviously, I didn't know what it means to be a leader, and I learned it when I joined the company. So yeah, to answer your question, it was definitely my choice, and I think it's very so important that we feel it when we decide to take this path, because it's not easy, and if we do that only to please our father or please someone else, I think we cannot last very long. And being a woman in this man field, I never felt it was a point. I think mainly because my father did not make a point about that. And I joined, I was young, so maybe also I was a bit unconscious, not very conscious about these questions, and I started, as you mentioned, really on the low level, on a normal level, as a trainee. So yeah, I think I did not felt this thing, and then I was able to have the respect of my teams, because they saw me who I was, and not a girl, not the daughter of the owner or someone else. They just get to know me. They see I was very motivated. I worked hard, and the most important, I wanted to continue the story of the company with them. So I think that's how I got their respect.
Well, I can imagine that, spending 5 years in every single department also earns a bit of respect. Can you tell us a little bit how that was? Were you actually out physically moving boxes?
No, I did not. I did not move boxes concretely. I started in the logistic department, which is a bit the point or the department where in the middle of everything, between the sales, between the operations, and contact with customers. So that, I think that was the most where I learned the most. And then actually my father made a very clear program, but in the end I think we never follow it. We just the first step we follow the logistic part, but then I really went by opportunities or where there were problems or where there were needs. So it was really, we really did that a bit with the instinct, and we let the spontaneously happen. So of course I went to the field as well to see how we pack, how we do things. But in the end, I really saw and went through the different departments depending on where the need was or where the project was. And I was very soon, very early, I was also on top of projects with my father, of course, always, but already looking at some strategic issue there were, because we were on a situation not easy for some department. There were some department with an important crisis. So I went there, and well, I learned, really by doing. So, but I like this way of learning.
Absolutely. Thanks. Ladina, you started out studying linguistics and languages. You then went into journalism, and now you are arguably one of the most important female leaders in Swiss media today. At what point did you switch from I want to be a journalist to I want to be a leader?
Yeah, hi everybody. Well, it was never a plan. Even when I was studying to become a journalist, I didn't have the plan to become a journalist. It was my father, again, Isabelle, who said, well, you should earn a little bit money, during your studies. And so I said, well, who is waiting for me? I just have my degree, okay, but I mean, that's it. So, and he said, well, you like writing, why don't you ask a couple of newspapers? And I did, actually, just to show him that they don't need me, and I got accepted by 2 of them. So then that was the moment when I started my path on journalism, and I fell in love immediately, and since then I'm just lost and completely in love with journalism. What happened then, I've been working quite a couple of years as journalist, frontline, writing about, rather regional here right now I'm at the Engadine, so in Swiss mountains. I wrote about, I don't know, assemblies, union assemblies, and little stories, culture in villages, and I adored it. And then I became head of the cultural department of the newspaper back then. And I quit because I didn't like, it was too much management and too little writing. And so I went to the Romanche radio, the Romanche part of the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation in Chur, because of that, because I wanted to be a journalist again. And it took like 3-4 months, and they offered me a job as head of one of the departments or teams. And so I said yes, and so on and so far. So the first steps were like, opportunity. They came, and I was really naive. I didn't know what was expecting me. Sometimes I thought, well, if I knew, I would have said no. So good that we can't see the future, that we just try. We just sometimes stumble in, and so I did that. And then there was a point when I was probably in Bern, leading one of the departments with Ringier Group, when I realized, okay, now I think it's, I won't go back anymore to journalism, to hands-on journalism. Now I'm in media management, which I like as well, because what I'm doing actually is making sure that people can do good journalism. Either if it's in the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation, which is a little bit different than now at Ringier, where it's another pace and other circumstances, but that was always what I wanted, that gives my life a purpose. As Alisée said before, for me, it's important to do something which I think, that's an added value to my life, but maybe to other people as well. And journalism is it. And so it makes me happy to just be able to empower people, editorial teams to do a good job. And that's how I got here.
That's interesting. And I know that you did an executive MBA. Was that more recently? And has that helped you in terms of embodying the leadership role?
Yeah, but not especially leadership but management, because my way in school and also university, you said, I mean, it was language. I didn't actually, come across a number in terms of business for my entire path career by now. And then I said, I really have to learn that. And so that's what I focused rather on the management part rather than leadership. But it helped a lot, not only, to be better at to understand, but also for my self-consciousness to say, okay, I know what you're talking about. If we talk about HR or marketing or the numbers, I'm not the expert, the super expert, but I know what we're talking about, so don't fool me. So.
Very good, very good. Okay, well, maybe let's just jump into the heart of things. You all three of you, we're talking about the media industry, international or transportation industry, and venture capitalism, startups. I suspect in each of your industries, there are a lot of challenges with this pandemic. In your personal situations as leaders of your teams and your organizations, how are you coping with this? What are you doing to lead your teams? And maybe you can tell us very concretely, like if there are certain steps you have taken to ensure better follow-up with your teams or communication, and then also on a personal level, perhaps you can tell us how you're coping as leaders. You have to lead people, but then you also have to think of yourself. I don't know if anyone can start.
I guess I have a fun story to share. It wasn't that funny at the time, but when the pandemic came, we were 3 weeks to our global annual summit, which was at the same time our kind of annual team retreat. So it was super important for the team building of our teams that are scattered around, I think, 40 countries. And so Bern had announced 1,000+ people events are to be canceled. We could not lose the revenues, and we had committed so much, not only to our partners, but more importantly to the entrepreneurs that needed this event to take place, because there was funding commitments, there were connections that had to take place. So this was going to happen no matter what. And it was the same time of my due date of my second child. So it became this kind of war zone. Everyone we overnight built a media broadcasting platform. We had unbelievable partners such as about Dorier from the MCI group here in Switzerland that just also, they knew overnight they had to reskill. And we thought of, okay, now we're becoming we're going to be a broadcasting company. We have to broadcast valuable content and figure out all the interactions we were doing offline. How can they be done online? Knowing that it was just a whole different game. And so everyone had their rooms that had to become studios, and we were figuring out what lighting looked like. How did we tell a story? It became all about storytelling suddenly, and no more about just connecting or big stages. Luckily enough, my little girl came just the week after. So we just kind of powered through, made it happen. It was one of the most memorable moments of 2020, also because it was the best way to re-engage the team. There was this kind of big mission. All the startups, investors, everyone was kind of depending on us. So we felt the need and the emergency to make this happen. It was actually a great team building effort. All the advantages of being a young organizations doubled down, because you have to be extremely agile. You have to be very comfortable to rethink the process, your job description, the way you interact. And all this was something that was quite embedded in our culture, because that's how we operated. So it allowed us to go very fast. And that became actually the backbone of our whole marketing and event strategy since. So it was a really powerful sprint, if I may say so. And then, so that was kind of the more personal team aspect of it. And then because we were working on Zoom from day one, all this element of working in remote was not an issue. What was an issue is how much it impacted on the personal stress of our team members, because some were very different in reacting to this. Of course, the tensions were more or less high depending on which country you were living in. The anxiety levels were very different. And so we had to suddenly customize even more our approach with every team member, which was difficult because there's clearly a bandwidth issue. So we rethought the whole kind of communication process. So in terms of knowledge sharing, we now use a platform called Notion. We kind of doubled down on Slack and trying to be much more efficient in how we created the groups, the subgroups, so that transformation went much more clearly, because the lack of information was also one of the big builds up of anxiety in our teams in every country. And with the founding team, we worked very intentionally and consciously in being extremely transparent with them. So we did this kind of internal communication where I think, especially for the talents of today, authenticity is probably the most, for us, it's what's the most fair way to approach our talents. And I think, especially in today's world where we're over this kind of virtual reality, even through all the social media, etc., they can kind of detect, excuse my French, bullshit from far. So authenticity was the only way to go. And so we were very fair and transparent with the fact we don't have all the information. So in the next months, we're going to be operating with 30% of information. We were already a company operating on 70% of info, but now we've got even less information to go with. And we don't know how hard it's going to hit on certain divisions in terms of the potential jobs, but we're good. Here's our action plan. This is what we're going to do. And then we had a lot of back and forth with the team that came up with really good solutions, because most of the activities to support startups on the ground and team members on the ground actually came from the teams itself. So there was a very bottom-up approach. They built a website called We Seedstars Care. They started building guidebooks for startups to operate under COVID. They really were the ones pushing everything directly with our beneficiaries and partners. So that was something we really kept from 2020, is we're not transparency, radical transparency, something we'll be moving towards even more. Bottom-up decentralized approach is something we'll be continuing to move forward, because we saw the fruits of it and there's no going back, even in the new norm of physicality. And then rethinking all our communication process, because it's still today the biggest bottleneck, so that everyone can be effective and perform well.
Wow. So first of all, that was like a huge, change management situation. And then on top of that, you're having a baby.
Yeah.
I mean, and then on top of that, I'll just have a baby. It must have been quite a challenge on the professional and the personal side of things. So what I'm hearing from you is, when you practice radical transparency with your teams, you actually get buy-in.
Yeah.
And from that buy-in, I suspect that there comes a certain amount of responsibility. If your team is with you on, you're all on the same page and you all have the same level of information, then they take responsibility, which is how this ground up approach comes about. Would you agree with that?
Exactly. Now, for every transparency, you have to also be equipped and prepared to give them the right training, resources, time, so that they're able to integrate and manage that information. Because sometimes it's huge responsibilities where they don't necessarily have the hard and soft skills to operate with. And so it's just more chaos.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely. And that's something I really think there's no going back. Especially if you want to attract the best talents today.
And how do you manage perceptions? When you're speaking to your teams remotely on Zoom, it's very hard you miss the body language, the personal cues. There are certain people that feel uncomfortable speaking on Zoom because they don't want to interrupt. How do you manage those kinds of situations?
So again, we were on Zoom from day one. So we've been managing this for the past 8 years. And there are still, of course, the disadvantages to that. What we try to do is we always push teams to do their MBTI, which is a personality test. You have plenty on the market, which are good, but they're really powerful in making you understand why you're not able to understand the other. So typically me, who's in the spectrum of introversion, extroversion, quite heavily extroverted. So I'm fueled by engaging with other people and kind of spontaneously providing ideas. So I can take over a Zoom call quite quickly, whereas the introverts won't and do not necessarily want to, but we try to not put judgment on that, saying that that means they don't care or they don't have the information or they don't want to be participating. And we give them that space so that they can participate by email in the second phase, redo a one-on-one because they're much more comfortable in one-on-one than in more group situation. And then we extroverts try not to aggress them with kind of constant information. You got to give me a back and forth because I don't get back and forth with introverts in the same way that I would with extroverts. So like being conscious of our differences was something that changed a lot. Radical transparency, like I have now team members telling me, look, I thought you were really offensive in this email. And then I was like, well, actually, I did it in 2 minutes on my phone going on the bus. So I forgot to say the hey and thank you. But they also know that I'm kind of 3 words in email, so they don't take it personally. So all that radical transparency of figuring out what we can't see with body. And then we try to, you have to integrate all the informal moments virtually. So we found these really cool platforms. There's Sophia, there's even the Google Icebreakers. There's a lot of platforms where I've been part of it. And I found myself like an hour with 8 of our 90 members playing Pictionary, and it gets super competitive. And from there, we figure out that someone is just got pregnant, the other is changing countries, the other is actually starting salsa classes. And so you get all the informal conversations that are so important to build up the team. And so we have someone that, and different, we call them guilds. So it's these kind of groups that form on different thematics that push these different activities. So on Friday, we had a cooking class. On Tuesday, someone's pushing yoga. On Thursday, we're doing another Google Icebreaker. And I think that it's not a nice to have, it's figuring out really and experimenting what are these virtual informal gatherings that actually find a way to make the whole team, like to really talk about inclusivity when you talk about diversity. Yeah? There's diversity, yeah, we're diverse, but then it's how do you really include that diversity? And that's the second part of the work, which is of course the hardest.
Right, of course. And do you share, going back to the MBTI test, does everyone share their personality tests with everyone else, or is that just between the management?
So we went in the onboarding process, I think even in the selection process, we asked people to do it. Where we're not good at, and we're even thinking like, should everyone now sign with their MBTI? So just to, a reminder, because it's a lot of repetition. And so we're not good at that yet, because some are intuitively or by curiosity really interested to engage through that, others less, or just simply forget. And so we're figuring out ways that it becomes as common as, knowing the names and jobs of your team members, because it really helps just not take things personally.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. Okay. You mentioned storytelling, and Ladina being in the media business and being a journalist. Is storytelling something that you've been integrating in how you're managing your teams during this crisis, or have you looked to other techniques or strategies?
Yeah, well, we kind of, came from another point. While Zoom was, as Alisée said, was kind of normal in their culture, it's not how we work together, let's say at a newsroom at Blick, that's it. I mean, that lives from the personal confrontation. And I know it's almost a year now. I've joined Ringier. I've been there for 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, this COVID thing is coming. I was appointed to be head of the task force at that moment. So I was kind of ahead of things, which was good for me, and also to get to meet people, to get to know people. And what I realized, well, we thought, okay, that's going to take a couple of weeks. And usually when we said weeks, it was days, like always with COVID, and when we talked about days, it was 1 day. And within a week, 7,000 people around the globe went to home office, and they weren't used to do home office at all. And they weren't used to communicate via Zoom almost at all. So that was a huge change, and we're kind of proud that, the technology worked. So we managed it quite well to get people home. But then we were, confronted with issues like in Africa. We have several countries in Africa we're operating in. And so they don't have always electricity at home. So they can't always join Zoom, maybe by mobile, but it's not sure that they can charge the mobile all the time. So, issues from us in Switzerland, we were like, oh my God, I have just a 4-bedroom apartment, how bad it is. And then you hear stories like that, and you change a little bit your perspective. So the change was amazing, was huge for us. What I realized quite fast, that what Alisée said as well, one-on-one was kind of the way for me, because there are some introvert people, and I had millions of one-on-ones, which was, I think, good for the team. For me, it was good too, but it took time. It really took time. So what you asked also what it meant for us as being in a leadership position. It's a matter of time. I mean, we had days, my day starts at 7 or 7:30, and just go through without any break. And then at a certain point, I had to talk also to my assistant, just saying, yeah, I mean, that works well in a schedule, theoretically, but it's my life, I don't have any time for lunch anymore. I can hardly go to the toilet because there's just no break between the Zoom conferences. And so you have kind of to learn, because if you have physical conferences, you just have to move from your office to the meeting room, or maybe to another city or another building. That's always time to do something or just think about something. Nothing about that if you have a day full with Zoom calls. And I think we learned it quite well. I think now, after a year, all the informal stuff, comes quite naturally in a call like this, because you start reading people. Otherwise, you play a little bit with the icons, or a different way of humor in order to understand what people are saying. I like that a lot. But in terms of intensity, I think this is weeks and days we have now, that you can't compare it to a normal world, because it's so hard. There's hardly any time in between. And of course you can stoppers and islands and I don't know what, but at the end of the day is just full. So it's important. It's really important to have even more contact to people than in the normal world, because you don't have to, oh, by the ways, while going for coffee or something, everything is formal because you have to set up a meeting for everything. And I think as well, it's come, I was kind of angry these last days and weeks, and I said, come on, we just have, a little issue. We don't need a call for everything. We can solve things by just deciding, or maybe a quick mail and it's done. We started having calls for everything, it's enough. But it's so I'm looking forward for a world which is a little bit more hybrid, and where you have these little moments just for yourself, to walk to the train station, or to walk to the tram, or to the bus, or a little bus ride where you and your thoughts and nothing else. So
yeah. And what are you doing for yourself personally to kind of cope with the 12, 14-hour days? Is it sports or hobbies or
I wish
meditation?
I'm not, sports. I never really liked sports, so I have to force myself a little bit to do sports. I'm kind of, in danger of being a little workaholic, so I have to take care a little bit. No, what I really like is TV shows, Netflix and stuff. That helps, and sometimes just listen to a little music, or go for a walk and just let the thoughts fly a little bit. But it's true that, especially now in this year, which was for a company like Ringier really tough, so in terms of money, because what we saw, especially in media, and I think all of it's such a tremendous paradox that there was never such a need for media than last year, but the numbers just went down, 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 down. So you see how tough the business is. So it was a lot of work, and I work quite a lot. So there will be the day where I have to maybe consider a little bit more to the work-life balance. But right now I'm just working quite a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Isabelle, your industry is very not Zoom oriented, right? It's very physical. How have you been dealing with this, and how's the industry? I mean, the moving industry. You mentioned to me last week that you did quite a good year in 2020. How is that? How did that work?
Yeah, so first of all, a word about the business. We see different situation, because we have a good split of business share between the international moving and fine art transport. There are two different worlds, even though for both we use trucks, but there are different markets, and the moving industry is something, maybe it's not very instinctive, but it's an industry which goes well when there is good years, but development, because you hire people, you need bigger locations, so you need to move your office, but also in crisis period, because even if you let people go when they have an expat contract, you have to organize the move for them as well. Company, they reduce the size of the company, so they also need to move their facility. So in the end, we managed to be pretty busy, and I'm happy about the numbers we made. The fine art was a bit more difficult, and which is pretty obvious, because the museum were most of the time closed, so most of them did not change their exposition. There were no art fairs, auction house, online, so no transport. And so this, because of all the situation, we had much less transport, international transport. But fortunately we managed to do a fair amount of business with local fine art move, and also with storage. So I'm very glad we had all such a diversity of businesses. Sometimes it's not easy to manage, because you have to sometimes I have 4 different casquettes cup in my head, because once the morning I talk to my moving department, the afternoon to my fine art department, and the day after to Zurich, and the day after to Lausanne. So sometimes I feel a bit schizophrenic, but I really realized that in the crisis, and my father always told me that the strong of our company is being diversified, and 2020 really confirmed this theory. So how did we manage to the crisis? Through with the tools. So of course we for the one who could, we went on Zoom, but I must say it was not as quick as I heard from the other panelists. We for a while we really keep our meeting physically with the team, because also we have people, they needed to be on the warehouse in the company, so we need to be there. So we made hybrid communication via phone, and also being there. And I think what makes the success of our management team is the communication. This is clear. And I very quickly I built a management team crisis, so a smaller group of people. With them, I share all the information, but also the feelings, because we were so in a different world that it was also important for me to share the doubts, the hope, and how we felt, and I think that was also done by my colleagues, and doing that we could I think have a clear vision of the situation, but a situation maybe at 8 o'clock and maybe at 10 o'clock it was a different situation, but we managed to take decision when it was appropriate to take them, and to also be able to change the decision or take a new decision maybe the afternoon, and not because the decision of the morning was wrong, but just because the situation changed. So that was such an amazing for me, and I think for a lot of people, a training or experience, because when you are a leader, you think, well, I have to take decision, and I have to be a bit consistent with my decision. I cannot change decision by hours. But in this situation, it was totally normal, and I think it was needed to be able to change the decision and say to the teams, well, guys, we communicate this in the morning. Now in the afternoon, the Council Federal spoke, and now is the situation, so let's adapt. And that was really such a stressful situation, but also such an amazing situation, because the team spirit that came out of it was just amazing. And really, I think I have a good, if we can call it like that, but good souvenir of that moment, because we felt we are one, and I have a good team, and now I also have the proof that it's a good team, and it was good to feel strong and to feel this solidarity spirit during the crisis.
Yeah, that's interesting. Alisée mentioned that as well, that they seem to have come out stronger.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, we had Lorenzo Stoll speak to the club a couple of weeks ago. He's the managing director of the Swiss International Airlines for Swiss Romande. And he came out saying pretty much the same thing, that his teams had come together so much. Of course, a huge hit to the airline industry, but right when the pandemic hit, they were able to activate, and they brought in tons of health equipment, and they repatriated families from around the world. So they came together around a common cause. And when I asked him the question, what characteristics of your leadership do you think you used the most or were the most helpful? And he mentioned empathy and listening. And so maybe hearing the three of your stories, what characteristics do you think you had to call on the most during this pandemic in order to be good leaders?
Maybe I can jump in your question, because I have also similarity with what you just said, with the sense of you feel doing something for your country, because we were called by the HUG, so hospital, the COVID hospital from Geneva, and they asked us to move some stuff, furniture stuff, to make space for bed. And you have this feeling that you want to help your country, and at the same time it was such the chaos and also the fear that we were all feeling. And so I didn't want to tell the team, yeah, you have to go. So we planned the team, and so first they were okay, and then the day after, it was I think just after the federal council decided the lockdown. So they said they were very scared, and some of them say, well, not sorry, I don't feel it. And I think at that moment you really have, I think before I would say, no, you have to go, you have to be a bit harsh. And my name is also not something about that. But in this time, I felt, well, I think I cannot force anyone to go, and even though it's for the healthcare, and I want my company to help, but I don't want to force people, because who am I to force them? And maybe then they get the virus, and maybe they have bad consequence. So, and I let the choice, and I communicate that to all of the team. So I took them and I say, well, guys, I understand you are on front line. For me, it's easy. I'm remote, I'm home office. Yes, I keep working, but you are the soldat, and you are. So I will not oblige you to go, because you have your own situation. And very interestingly, then I think 90% stay and accept to go. And I'm sure that if I had obliged them, I would have a number of no-show, very important. So I think this, for me, it was a very important lesson. At one point, you're not the leader obliging people, you're the leader maybe talking to them how you feel with your feeling, and also let them take their responsibility. And it was a very interesting lesson. And I was also very proud, of course, of my team, because they went to this important job, and they helped the hospital to reorganize.
Yeah, that's certainly something to be proud of. And it calls back to kind of this idea of radical transparency that Alisée was talking about. I mean, you were very frank with your teams, and you put out the risks for them, and they accepted it. 90% of them accepted it, which meant that they also took on board some of that responsibility. So how about the others?
I'd like to, really underline what Isabelle said. In the beginning, where you didn't know, should we send people home? Do they want to go home? And some were scared, some were really scared in the beginning of the pandemic, where we didn't know. And I think it was a good choice here as well to just, as soon as possible, just open the doors and say, if you don't feel secure, safe to come to work in a newsroom with 150 people, just work from home. It's up to you. And then, 2 days later, we just sent everybody home. So it wasn't a choice anymore. It was just, we have to send you home. But that the people that had the choice, they weren't forced into a situation where they didn't feel safe, where they felt exposed to this virus. I think it helped a lot and created a lot of goodwill and trust in the management, the leadership team. What I also think, empathy is, I think that's always, that should be actually basics for leadership, that you're on a human level, empathic and trying to see the person and not just the workforce. So I think that's basics in the crisis, even more important than otherwise. But what I also realized, that hasn't been mentioned by now, how important it is to just be, a little optimistic. I was at the task force and I read, I spent my nights reading about what's going to happen here right now. And I think I was a little ahead of the other ones when I saw, my gosh, this won't turn out well, and at least not so fast. But still, to be completely honest and transparent, but also optimistic, and say, hey, come on, guys, we're going to manage this together. And you cannot be, as a leader, you can't be complaining, you can't be scared at the moment. You can be honest, but not, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? We're all going to, you have to be what's within the honesty and transparency, you should be optimistic and try to make best of it, and try to rather focus on hope than on fear, or rather the glass which is half full than half empty. That's what I kind of learned in the first phase of COVID.
Yeah, that's a really interesting advice. It's hard to be optimistic these days, and it's hard to see. Optimism also often comes from something to look forward to, and we don't really have a deadline for this crisis, and we don't have necessarily our summer vacations, our summer holidays to look forward to, because we don't know where we'll be able to go. So how have you been able to stay optimistic?
Well, if I was or not didn't really matter, I just thought it doesn't help if I'm just panicking. It doesn't help anyone if I'm just being depressed, even if I was it, and I still am sometimes, because I also want it to be over. But just, to focus on, hey, look, guys, what's happening in Israel, it's really positive. Look what's happening. I mean, progress we made, how we managed to do it, and just, I think that's always, I think, the task of a leader as well, to try to, not to be the scared one, not to be the sad one, not to be the frustrated one, even if you can once in a while say, yeah, well, I don't know what's going to happen. We will see, but we just have to try. And right now we think that A, B, C, D is the way to go. Do you have other opinions on that? Just let me know. Maybe we missed something, and we're happy to complete it with your opinion, because we just don't know it, but we think it's going to be fine at the end, something like that.
Yeah, and then you can also go home to your private rooms and maybe let off some steam there. But it's important to keep that perspective for your teams, I guess. Alisée, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I think for me, more personally, I had to go the other way, because I'm quite empathetic, I think the word, and I'm quite emotional. So that side works well. What I needed to do, and which I learned from my co-founders, is more garder la tête froide. So there was this really, confidence doesn't mean you have all the answers, but confidence is this kind of what Ladina and Isabelle were mentioning, is this kind of rational, optimistic approach to how we're going to move forward together. And that's what they really need, even more than just going in the details of every part of their personal life or their personal pains. They want to know that you've managed to comprehend what you can, provide a solution, knowing we're going to reiterate it constantly as we go through this kind of chaotic moments. And so that's something that was a great experience for me, because I could kind of, through the experience, work on that and work on my words, work on the way I would be approaching the teams and trying to help them build a framework, not necessarily the answers, but a framework in which they felt like there was some level of structure for them to move forward. And then I think we're quite workaholic, and I pushed myself on top pregnant. And unfortunately, when you are in a leadership position, you become kind of the default setting of how people think they should work, which is not necessarily what works for them. And so I'm trying to also intentionally share and understand other ways of working, because it's even difficult for me to not see. I'm trying to share the fact that I am in Seedstars. It's true, it's especially for the founding team, it's everything for us, and we're on top. We're quite workaholic, the founding team, but by choice, huh? But we're trying just to be also more intentional in showing that for us to perform, we are really considering our sleep. We are really considering the fact that we need different type of activities, maybe sports, maybe more artistic, creative, whatever it is. We try to be more intentional in showing it, because behind a a screen, especially with emails and Slacks that can go out at any time of the day on any time zone, it feels like that's all you should be doing, which is counterproductive in the midterm in terms of their performance. But that's tough. And it's even, of course, tougher virtually when you don't see the behind the scenes. But those were the kind of two big learnings.
Yeah, so I wrote down while you're speaking, pragmatic empathy. So it's that balance between being empathetic, but also having a game plan, I guess. Well, thank you for that. I'm conscious of time, so I think we will start taking questions now. So as I said, you can either use the emoji to raise your hand through the reactions at the bottom of your screen, or you're welcome to send us a question via the chat function. So I think Jean-Claude is raising his real hand.
Yes, hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question. How do our speakers feel about quotas in favor of women in management positions? I have to state my clear position. I am strongly in favor of quotas. I worked for 20 years with a very dynamic, very progressive company in the technology field. And among 12 vice presidents, we only had one woman during all that period. We have certainly had lots of very, very competent women, but for some insidious reasons, women just don't make it. There's a glass ceiling. So I notice that many successful women are against quotas because they feel insulted that they should be selected on a basis of quota. I think statistical reality demonstrates that quotas are absolutely needed. We miss a major value to companies by not having more women in senior management positions.
Yeah, I used to be one of those saying no quotas, and I wouldn't put quotas in Seedstars. So we have, jury members, conferences, selection programs, things like that, because I really felt offended by it. And I think philosophically, it really doesn't solve the root problem of this being embedded so early on in our society. So I would prefer seeing this in early childhood education, in the infrastructures of day-to-day. There's so much that needs to be done and invested in so that we don't even need to put quotas later on. But another woman leader came to me kind of like, what the hell are you saying? And she kind of convinced me because she said true equality will be the day where there will be as many unqualified women as men. And I think there is that perverse effect, which is small percentage of women indeed not competent, but chosen simply because of the quota factor. And that's because there's a board or there's a management team that really didn't believe in it. And so they took whomever, and it was kind of, just a packaging element. But the reality is, in most cases, it proves management teams and different industries wrong. And it builds more role models so that women much earlier on in their careers or in their lives can identify to other careers, opportunities, ways of living, which is one of the, through evidence-based research, it's still, role model has a huge impact on building a virtuous cycle. And so it's very important. But it's true, a couple of years ago, I was quite against it.
Me too. I was against it too, but as you said, there, scientifically spoken, there, it's two advantages in quotas. It's role models and it's speed. You can speed up a development, and that's why I think, yeah, it's worth it. But as you said, Alisée, it's not enough. You just can't put a quote and think problem solved in the company. You need quite unsexy things like processes, like structures, and make sure that that has a kind of sustainability in it. just, I think, so that's what my point is. I think quotas okay, but not as single measure. You need it as a package, and then it's okay.
Yeah, I agree.
For myself, I have a balanced opinion. I think it depends on the position we talk about, but I'm rather against it. And I think what is the most important is not to arrive at the final decision and think, oh, I need a woman, but it's when you're on the selection process to make sure, and maybe there to put quotas and have the same number of candidate women and between women and men. Because I think that when we arrive at the selection decision point, it's already too late, and I think we could already do a lot of thing when we have the same amount of candidate and make a real and have maybe obliged in the selection process to have very good candidate and to make the effort, because sometimes it's just a lack of effort to go and search for good women candidates. And I think this then would also be more evident that we have good women candidates, and then we select them without being obliged. And this will, of course, give a better credit to the selection, because unfortunately, when you put quotas, and already now, I mean, without quotas, there is such a feminine wave that we feel that for all new important positions, there are women, okay, except in valleys, but all over the countries and in the companies, there are so many women now nominated, which is great, of course, but we cannot totally, not think that it's because of the woman wave. But I think this it's important and it's good because it speeds up the process.
Thank you for that. Luca, I think you might have a question on the chat to share.
Yeah, we have a question. First question is from Robert Falkowitz. Says, once the pandemic is over, what will you stop doing as a leader that you have been doing during the pandemic? What leadership characteristics that you have found useful during the pandemic should not be used in quote unquote normal times?
That's a very interesting question.
For my, I think I would cancel the WhatsApp group that I created because I think that WhatsApp, it's too close to the private life. And I think with the pandemic and also with the Zoom, we went too much into the private life of people. And I think it's important to respect the life, the balance between life and professional, and not being too much into their private life. So yeah, I think I would try to, I'm not saying that I went too far, and now already it's a bit, but in the time where they were really the high point of the crisis, we had to phone maybe during Sunday. So that it was needed, obviously, because it was a time, the time management was very important, but in the regular time, I think we should find a better balance between the private life and professional time.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Ladina or Alisée, do you have something to add?
And to be honest, for me, I don't think I would go back on anything. I've just learned more.
Same for me. And I think that I don't think that we're going back so soon, back. I think there will be quite a long hybrid time. So it has to be kind of an evolution, and same for me, actually. Yeah, I think many things I could tell you what we keep on doing, what we've learned during the pandemic, but what we're going to stop, it's much harder. Really good question.
Thanks, Robert, for the question. Luca.
Next in line, we have Ron, who raised his hand.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, ladies, for your comments. Everything you've said, I can probably sum up in 4 words. And I say that with authority. I believe every day should be Women's Day. Having grown up with 2 sisters and 2 daughters, and the only male in the house was the dog, and that didn't last long. Anyway, I would like to say that your comments are wise. I believe they're flexible. I believe they're empathetic, which is so important, especially in today's environment, and also that they're all very intelligent. So thank you for that. I do have a question for Isabelle. Why did Harsch take the bold step to go into the moving sector? And what unexpected problems did you have in doing so?
Sorry, I didn't understand the step we made.
Why did you move? Sorry for the pun. Why did you move into the art moving segment?
What did we move?
Why?
What?
It was the bold.
Why?
Yeah, why? Pourquoi?
Well, first of all, we started with the fine art division. So then my father developed the international moving sector, and then we also developed for a while the relocation, and then we focused rather on the moving activities. And it's very, for us, it's a very important market in Geneva, of course, with the all international and expatriate movement. But I'm not sure I get your question.
Well, I always thought that Harsch was very much involved in moving people.
Yeah.
And when I saw you move more into the art sector, I thought that was a new venture, a new area for you.
No, it was my grandfather. He started with the fine art, so it's rather my father who developed the business, and maybe, who knows, I will develop to move something else, because you have always to be looking forward and moving forward. That's why it's our tagline as well. So
thank you very much.
Where we can have opportunity, we'll go.
Okay, thank you very much, Isabelle.
Thank you.
Luca, more questions?
Yeah, we have several coming up. We have a question from Philip Sundquist, which is similar to the one we've seen before, but with a twist. So I think it's worth addressing to all panelists. Which changes brought by the pandemic do you think will become permanent for your respective businesses?
So I think for us, there were some clear shifts business-wise. So for example, we had a strong division in events and marketing. And so that's completely changed. And the way we operate, the types of skills we need, and the type of partners we work with. So that clearly is an ongoing shift. And I think just how we will do events and engagement within our community will change even if we go back to some physical formats. And then I think it's more learnings, which are not necessarily as if we weren't completely doing this before, but in this case, I have to say the beauty of this pandemic was it accelerated it very quickly. And because everyone in their day-to-day habits had to become comfortable with an online format of it, to engage, to learn, to do business, it made it so much easier for us to also accelerate our path in how to operate, how to build global teams before people really wanted localization on every aspect of a program. And so that was huge benefits for us, because we can actually be even more diverse and inclusive. We can consider really global talents. We can really consider processes that help us scale, because we're using an online platform to do so. So in that sense, it was really powerful, because it didn't only push us to get up to speed, but the whole community we were interacting with had to also get up to speed.
What I think, the 9 to 7 office days might be kind of over. So this flexibility we gained during the pandemic, I think it's going to not stay the way like right now, but the hybrid way of working, I think that's something we learned. For Ringier, we weren't so much into home office before, And now we're 100% almost working from home, and we realized it works. And that wouldn't have been, that wouldn't have happened without the pandemic, because now we have the proof of that it works, and that people can work from home as well as from the office as well. But what I think, and it might be a little stupid thing, but what I really hope and I think won't come back is that people go to the office if they're sick, times that you go, you have the flu, you're kind of caught a cold, and you think, well, I'm not half dead, so I can go to work. I think that's over, and I hope that's over. Because already, now someone who's coughing in the train, he or she is looked at like, oh my God, who's that? And I think that won't come back so soon. And I think for the healthy, for the entire staff, it's going to be better. When I have a flu, when I have a cold, I just stay at home a couple of days, and I don't force myself to show how how hardworking I am, how it's impossible to go on if I'm not at the office. So we're going to find ways to cope with being sick much better than we did by now.
That's a great advantage, by the way. I'm looking forward to that. Isabelle, would you like to add to that?
I have not much to add. I agree. It really helped everyone to adopt the technological tools. Obviously, I'm young, so for me it was easy, and I was more pushing for digital tools to my teams. But some of them were a bit, reluctant to go on that. And thanks to the pandemic, it was not a question anymore. So now it's not questioned whether it works or not. And I think what will stay after is that we will use it only when it's needed and not full time, because for us, it's not the best way to work. And I think it's not also neither what the people want. And we realized when it was open to come to work or to do home office, on the people who are doing office work, so that could choose for home office or not, the percentage was 20%. So 1 day per week. And I was very surprised, because I have people, of course, working not all very close to the office. So it's a time to spend, but I think they really take benefits of coming to work. And it's nice to see, because in the end, we are human and we like to see each other and to have contact. So yeah, I think we will use the tools for what is needed, and also have the benefits of it.
Thanks. I think I'm just conscious of time. We've got about 5 more minutes, so maybe one more question and then we'll round it up. Luca?
We have a raised hand from Bonifatio.
Bonnie.
First of all, thank you very much to our 3 panelists. You complement each other beautifully. I would like to push you just a step further, because you are in position to influence what happens as we either return to what's normal or create a new normal as we move out of the COVID. What is your vision? What is your dream for what the world will be like as we move out of this? And what are you going to do to help realize whatever that dream is? Thank you.
Wow, not an easy question. I think for my company on my scale, because I don't. But what I realize, and I think we should all take a lesson of that, is that to focus on what makes sense and on quality, and not only on quantity. And we were maybe driven a lot before the pandemic by quantity and volume and turnover higher and higher. And maybe this stop that was made and forced by the crisis, at least for me, it made me realize that sometimes small is beautiful, and we don't necessarily need to run after the quantity, and we should rather focus on quality. And sometimes you can be even more performant and have made a better margin, and in the end make a better profit if you manage to focus on quality, which is not easy, because we all felt that we will lose something, and if we say no, we will lose a business, and what will be the consequence. So yeah, that's what I also dream for the world, because if we all try to focus on quality, also for traveling or in your life, the way you consume, I think it's also an ecological, it's also good on the ecological point of view.
Couldn't agree more, Isabelle. I think you're so right, and I thought the same thing. What we have experienced as a society, let's say in Switzerland, but also in other countries, it brought out really good sides of the society as well. A lot of solidarity, a lot of, creativity as well, in order to cope with the situation, to cope with the boundaries and the limits, and still be able to, to get together without bringing each other into danger by infecting, or, we can't go out in a bar, let's go for a walk, for example. So I think we experienced quite a nice side of our society, and I hope that we can make sure to bring that into the post-COVID time as well. What concerns the business, I'm in media, so what we did at Blick, which is a tabloid newspaper in the German part of Switzerland, coming to Swiss Romande as well, we decided like a month ago, okay guys, now we really have to stop with bad news. We have mandatory. On the front page, we have at least one positive aspect of how we're coping, how we're going on, how we're moving on, because it's the responsibility of media to not just to inform people, but also to kind of give them hope. And that's completely new way of looking. You can say that's service public. That's actually the task of a public media broadcaster, but not of a tabloid newspaper. But we changed the attitude, realizing we have this responsibility as well, and we have the power because we have to reach, and we have to make sure that people see also, we don't have to lie to them, but show the positive things as well, and not just the negative things, although the negative things click much better. That's statistically, kind of maybe surprising, but bad news just click better, also in COVID. But nevertheless, we focus and we stress on the positive, the optimistic perspective as well. And I hope that I'm sure we can go on like that, because it is really important.
And maybe just for me, I think our mission is even more powerful today. Like it resonates even more because we were even more convinced that entrepreneurs need to participate in reshaping these industries and figuring out sustainable solutions to some of our bigger challenges in this world today. So I think our mission has taken full shape since. There's also this question, I think, that accelerated for us because we were a young organization. We kind of had the luxury of just being by default diverse. It was easy for us to talk about. We just have this great kind of gender numbers and nationalities and personalities, but we weren't really intentional in not figuring out what did inclusivity mean. So how did you really integrate all these differences in making it kind of the wisdom of a crowd, and how were we portraying that? So there's a lot of work to be done on that, and we hope to be an example and a case study that we can disseminate to the wider community. And then more on a personal level, I think especially having young children, everything that we do at Seedstars, but myself with my values, we try to ask ourselves, for example, if we do, we're launching an education program in several countries, it has to be as good as I want my children to be part of it. And I think that kind of constant reflection of you would want the next generation to be doing this, and how are you building it for them is really important, and how you're trying to consume on a day-to-day, how you're trying to integrate with the local communities, all these questions, which I think I would take for granted. And with the pandemic, I realized how much I need them in my mental health. So it's quite egocentric, but it's these things that I hope I can be conscious and make it sustainable over time, and not like have the quick fix, which is very tempting.
Well, I think that is a great question to end on. A few drops of optimism from each of you, and things that vision that we can look forward to. If we were in person, I would be shaking your hands and giving to those of you who are not already members of the American International Club, the three of you, an honorary membership. So if you haven't had it already, which I suspect maybe Isabelle and possibly Alisée, because you've addressed the club a few years ago. So Ladina, it's on you now. You have to become a member of the club and join us in some future events, hopefully in person. And I sincerely want to thank all three of you for your time, for your honesty, and for really some interesting insights into how you work and how you're managing and leading your teams and yourselves in this time of crisis. So at this point, I would like to ask everyone to unmute themselves, and you can congratulate our panelists and say thank you yourself.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It's been a great time. Thanks for your time, and good luck with the rest of your day.
Bye bye. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.